So, guys, welcome to the Business and Life, I would say Millennial podcast by Ben and Mathew. Today we're going to talk about the different mindsets and attitudes, and really, just way of thinking that we've seen throughout like the different countries in which we've lived in. I think this is a really, really interesting topic, so that we can compare, the different proposed societal norms essentially by different countries, and get to kind of compare them in between them. So, my background is I was born in Spain, and then lived in the UK for three and a half years. So, what I've realized about growing up in Spain is that what's trying to be proposed by society is for you to live off third parties. So, try and get like a government job, try and, blame politicians for your situation right now, trying to blame the market, a classic one, right?
Yeah.
Trying to blame, like the market, right, for what your current situation is. Like,
yeah.
In Spain, for example, I'm not sure whether you guys know this, like youth unemployment is at like almost 35-40%. So
it's crazy. That's just so crazy. And I think people see Spain as not as like a third world country, but as a sort of top standing European country that has their affairs in order. But when you actually look at things like the unemployment rate, standard of living, it's actually pretty poor.
Yeah.
I mean, 35% unemployment rate with the youth is insane. That you'd have equivalents of that in South American countries and these communist countries.
Yeah. And, I guess everyone's gone through that spell, and it's just like a period of time, but it's your attitude towards it, right? Like, are you going to look at yourself in the mirror and say like, hey, Matthew, hey, Ben, hey, audience, it's our fault, and we're going to take care of this, and we're going to take the steps in the right direction? Or am I going to be that lazy guy that's just going to, go to the bars, not do anything about his situation, and just think that somehow your life is going to change, no?
Yeah, there's no accountability, there's no responsibility, there's no sort of, it's up to me to earn a living.
Yeah.
Back in 2,000, 5,000 years ago, if you didn't work, you didn't eat.
Yeah.
Your family starved, essentially.
100%. Yeah.
And I think the way it's gone over these centuries is that people seem to think that they're born and they live, and things should just be given to them, provided to them, and that anyone rich is just lucky and doesn't work hard and is just doing it off the backs of poor people, and they should just be. And I think everyone just wants handouts nowadays. Everyone's willing to work for a living, and it really drives me mad that people expect so much, and that we've talked about it, I think probably on every podcast, but I'm going to mention again. Offer to work for someone for free. Give that value to somebody, and they'll give you value back. And in a lot of countries, that's just unheard of. They would never work for free. They have this kind of mindset that they're more valuable than that. But they look past the fact that what they're getting back is more valuable than the £2,000 a month they would get for working.
Yes.
Which a lot of them don't realise. And I would assume in Spain, they certainly would never work for free with anything, or even have that kind of mindset.
You get a bit of everything, to be honest, everywhere. But what's trying to be proposed is mostly that. So, our government is it's based on, it's left wing, right now. So obviously we know what left wing proposes, right? So they propose, everything is for everyone. We want, people with less advantages to be given stuff because they're less advantaged. But what that really does, and this is my opinion, and this is just my view, it just creates that mindset within you that you can only take care of yourself if they give you something and they take care of you. It doesn't, it doesn't make you want to work for it.
There's so much wrong with that thought and that mindset, which it comes fundamentally down to: are you going to actually, at the end of your life, say, no, I worked hard in life and I achieved something, or are you going to say, I lived through life getting handouts from people? And I think you've got to look at the way you live your life, and if you honestly think that living your life by getting handouts from people is the way to go, then God help you, because I think these kind of people are just a drain on society. Now, okay, there are people that can't work through disability or whatever. Those are the people that do deserve funding. And in fact, if there was the people that could work actually did work, the people who couldn't work would actually be much better off. So the people that can't work, that just don't want to work and don't want to achieve anything and don't want to do a good hard day's work anymore, they're making the economy in the world worse for everyone. It's this kind of socialist mindset that people should be given stuff, and people that are successful should be giving stuff to the people that are less successful. Well, how does that work? That is just stealing. We have a progressive tax anyway, and I'm not in fan of a progressive tax, because essentially what you're doing is you're just taxing people for working smarter and harder and making more money. But it shouldn't really work like that. A flat rate tax is fairer because everyone's paying a fair share. It's not that you should be taxed more because you're making more, because you're adding more to society that way. And you're not getting any more benefits than the person who's not working as hard by giving more money to the public. So I'm not in favour at all of a lot of these socialist policies, and everything, in my opinion, privatised is more efficient, better off. And I think even in most economists, like 99% of economists, they realise that private enterprise is much more efficient than public enterprise. Some of the worst run companies in the world are public companies, and they're so inefficient and so poorly run, and their services are appalling.
I think when the privatization becomes really, really interesting is when you are able to create opportunities for people that may not have that opportunity in another system, right? So if it was a matter of privatizing everything and then having some people have some opportunities and others don't, like that's where the friction comes. But if you are able to create an ecosystem, right, where people are, if you work hard and if you prove yourself and if you want to, get better, you do get that opportunity over time. And that's something that's really, really interesting.
Do they have a minimum wage in Spain?
Yeah, they do. So I'll tell you what I pay in order to try and make an income. So every single month, if I want to make an income for Social Security over here, I've got to pay $350, which is pretty it's pretty substantial. And that's without the tax. So I have to pay that every single month in order to try and make an income. And then the tax rate on that is about it can go as big as 45%. And then the minimum wage is, I believe it's 750 euros, 900 euros per month. That's the net. So you really, as an employer, have to pay about 1.2, 1.3K per month per employee in order to have them properly served, let's call it.
Yeah. We've had a big problem in the UK with minimum wage. So I own businesses around the country, and I come from Surrey, so just on the outskirts of London. It's a very affluent area of the country, and the median income is significantly higher in Surrey than it is for the rest of the UK generally. So I don't necessarily feel the effects of the minimum wage, and no one really working here does. But up in the north, what the minimum wage is doing is stopping a lot of my businesses from hiring unskilled people, generally young people coming out of college, and allowing them to gain the experience to then get on the ladder of whatever career they want to get on. And so the minimum wage has increased so much that it now becomes an impossibility for us to hire these people because we can't afford to. And these people then don't get the experience. That experience will then allow them to get a higher paying job in the future and gain the skills and experience of, and not just sort of the experience on the job, but it could be any kind of job.
Yeah.
But there's some things you learn on the job that are really, really valuable. So sort of coming in on time management, sort of problem solving, all of these kind of skills are relevant to any job you do, and getting sort of that minimum level of skill that you get at a really basic entry level job, a lot of these youth can't do anymore. And what you find is that they then go to university, they laden themselves with debt, with sort of tens of thousands of pounds worth of student debt, and they think that that's going to change, that they're now going to get a much better job. But then they come out of university with a Mickey Mouse degree in media studies or gender studies or something nonsensical like that, and they realise that actually to the population at large and to business owners, that they don't want to hire anyone like that.
Yeah.
And so where do they go? Again, where do these people go? Well, they end up working for the government. Because the government, they've paid for these people. Well, these people are paid to go through university, but the government feel obliged to then give these people work. And so they create silly departments in government which taxpayers fund. And it's just another way of decreasing the productivity of an economy. And so I'm very against the minimum wage. Mostly because it stops people from getting that first rung on the ladder and working through. And I know. Sorry, you want to say something?
No. What do you feel about so like you're getting paid, say, like $10 per hour, right? Like, let's say you're at McDonald's. And $10 per hour at McDonald's it's actually pretty good. What's stopping you from becoming someone more valuable to the market? Not to university, not to, your curriculum, but to the actual market. So we live in an economic society, and if you add value to people, you get rewarded normally, most of the times. Do you feel that that's being shown at school, in society and so on in the UK, whereas like you guys should be focused on adding value to the market and then getting rewarded through that, as opposed to just, hey, I think you should take like a master's and then a doctorate degree.
Exactly.
It's
the way the education system in every country, really, I don't know many countries that do it well, but definitely in the UK, the way our education system currently is broken, because we're not teaching people and we're not giving the people skills that employers want. People come out with a degree from university, and there's this socialist mindset again that everyone should have a university degree. Well, I don't think that's the case, and you're just ladling people with debt, and most of those people are never going to be able to pay that debt back. And you're not getting the skills that employers want. So what I think the solution to that is focus more on teaching people at school and later on at college of the best ways to make yourself valuable, essentially.
So essentially become resourceful, no?
Exactly, become resourceful. Like what can you learn that the market needs? Media studies and gender studies, I'm telling you, nobody in the market wants that. Nobody in the market needs that. Go out, learn a skill that the market needs. And I think as an 18-year-old and 17-year-old, you're not going to know that. You're not going to know that you're going to come out of school or university and you're thinking that you're just going to walk into a job. It's just not how it works.
It used to work like that.
And it did. It used to work like that.
But not anymore.
But not anymore. And because what used to happen is people were taught actual skills, and there was a lot more. There was different things going on at the time, and there was a big boom. And through the 70s and 80s, where businesses were forming, and definitely the way this country has moved more to technology-based, services-led system. There are some jobs that used to be around that aren't around now, but still I think the schools and our government and education system need to teach people of how to be more valuable.
So Ben, let's say we've got like a listener right now listening to us. They figure out that, hey, okay, I'm starting to understand that this is the situation in which I'm in, right? I've been brought up in a way that makes me a bit entitled. I've thought that the government, politicians, and so on were going to solve my life. They were going to help me out. And through going and getting deep into podcasts such as like this one or entrepreneurial podcasts, I started to realize that, hey, okay, actually, there's another model that I want to follow. But I'm on step number 0 right now, right? So I've got to step my first foot on the ladder, let's call it. What would you do if you were like, right now? What would you do in order to change your situation and your mindset in that direction? Like 3 steps.
Yeah. So the first thing I would do is I would look at like what do I want to do from the next 10, 20 years? What job do I want to have?
Okay.
Where do I think? But also that needs to combine with, does the market need that job? So I guess the first stage is where do I see the jobs going in the future?
Yeah.
Does the market need that job? What kind of job would I need? What can I do that the market would need? And then how do I get there?
Okay.
And learn that career progression. And then, as we said again, as I mentioned earlier, find people in the industry and offer to work for them.
Yeah.
Work for them for free for 6 months.
Yeah.
Work for them for a period of time. Get the skills necessary, and the baseline skills necessary to work in the industry. And then after that 6 months, you can go on and get a high-paying job, much higher-paying job. Well, obviously higher than nothing.
Yeah.
And that is your career progression. And I think it's just a mindset change of saying, you know what, maybe I can't get to where I want without doing something free. Maybe I can't do it without adding that value.
Yeah.
The problem is, I think a lot of employers would, and me included, would hire people for less than minimum wage and pay sort of expenses and more.
Yeah.
But we can't do that because we're not allowed to. The government requires us to, if we set a contract for somebody, requires us to pay them at least minimum wage. And so what that means is that they either have to work for us for free, not on a proper contract, or they work for us full-time or part-time on a minimum wage, which doesn't work out beneficial to either party.
Would you think proposing this idea, because like this may be the situation, then becoming like freelancers and invoicing your client the cost of traveling to your workplace, the cost of the food that they will eat on that day, and then become a freelancer?
That's a great idea. Yeah, that's a great idea. Yeah. So I mean that kind of skirts around the idea of needing to pay that person minimum wage.
Yeah.
And so if you're saying what we can afford as a company is £500 a month to start with, then invoice us £500 a month, and we'll pay you that £500 a month.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a great point. I think that's definitely one way around it.
Yeah. And then in regards to like resources that you would use right now, what are some maybe 3 tools or books or podcasts or things that you would start listening to if you wanted to get to a position where you go from like a negative, entitled mindset that thinks that everything's going to be given to him, to someone that starts thinking for themselves, starts getting a bit of a criteria going on, starts becoming a bit more responsible. Like any books out there that you've read that have really helped you?
Yeah, so I mean, first of all, obviously listen to this podcast. That's got to be number one.
Yeah.
Second of all, I read quite heavy books for the average person. So sort of Milton Friedman's Capitalism and Freedom, which is a pretty heavy economics book, but essentially talks about the importance of free markets and your worth in society. But that's pretty heavy for most people. One thing I would say is find people that you admire that have been successful and study them. How have they got to where they are? A lot of the time they've got to where they are through working very hard or working for free for a period of time or whatever it is. Try and emulate what they've done and emulate that success. I would also say, if you're surrounded by individuals, friends and others who have the same mindset, have this mindset that they should get handouts every month, that they deserve everything even though they don't add any value, get away from them, spend less time with them. Join clubs where that these people aren't going to be there, or try to get in contact with friends that aren't like that.
Yeah.
And I've certainly had problems in the past where, as you get more successful, sort of friends will almost begin to turn on you, and it's usually the ones that are the opposite end of the spectrum that turn on you and say, and it partly is a jealous thing, it's partly because they have a completely different mindset to you.
Yeah.
And so I think for me, getting away from that circle really helped and allowed me to focus a lot more and just much more positive, and my progression in my career was much better because I didn't have that negative energy surrounding me. So I think that's really key. And if you do have those friends, it is going to be hard because you may get along with them, but it is in your best interest to do that, and you'll be thankful for doing it 5 to 10 years later. What about you? I mean, books wise.
So the classical one is like, it's not as heavy as yours, Rich Dad Poor Dad. So like that essentially shows you the different mindsets between someone that, throughout life goes like this, right? So, someone that invests in themselves, learns to have money work for them instead of working for money, learns the mindset of someone that's rich in resources, right? That's really, really interesting, and it tells you in a story format. I guess a couple other ones, Atomic Habits. So that essentially shows you how to improve yourself and start to change your identity a bit more. So you may have an aspect of yourself that you're not really happy about. Well, how are you going to change that, right? So that's something that Atomic Habits shows you. And then learning like some skill sets around maybe marketing, sales, lead generation, like LinkedIn, email marketing, website development, basic stuff that's going to take you from a skill set that generates $10 per hour to something that you can add value with and generate maybe 20, 30, 40 bucks per hour, and then build your skill set stack. So no one starts understanding how to raise finance, deal structures, and so on. You start learning web development, email marketing, Instagram, Facebook, and so on.
Yeah, and you've got to start somewhere.
Exactly. Yeah.
And whatever it is, just try something out. Give it a go. If you are going to fail, don't be afraid when you do fail. Don't be upset when you do fail, because that's what's going to help you grow. I mean, every good entrepreneur has failed at one point in time.
In fact, increase the frequency of failure.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
it's a typical thing as well. Like people say that because it's actually true. Like the more times you get rejected, the more deals you close.
Exactly. Yeah. And just going back to sort of our initial idea of this podcast, I think change your mindset. So stop looking at rich people as these evil big billionaires that are owning the world, that are doing such damage to society. Think of them as actually, to become a billionaire, they've had to add a significant amount of value and
100%.
essentially transform society. I mean, look at the top billionaires now. Elon Musk transformed automotives and battery storage, and essentially pushing our civilization to be a multi-planetary species. And then Jeff Bezos, he's made everyone's lives so much easier with more affordable goods, quicker time, and you've got to realize that successful people are successful for a reason, that they provide a good service and product to the market. And I think a lot of people have in their heads that these people are evil, but change your mindset, look up to them and think, these people have done really well. How can I emulate it? And I think that it is a bit of a mindset issue with a lot of people.
Yeah.
And so if you are stuck in your job and you want to change and you want to be successful, and you start with your mindset first.
Yep. Yeah. And I mean, I'm not sure about you, Ben, but like what I started doing is started listening, like watching YouTube videos, watching like podcasts, reading, consuming as much as possible from people that may have the mindsets and the results that I want.
Yeah.
And gradually you're going to start moving towards that direction. Obviously you want to ideally stop being a consumer of that and then become a producer, but you start consuming the right stuff.
And there's a lot of good entrepreneurs out there. There's a lot of good people to follow. and just absorb it all. Try and absorb as much as possible and learn as much as possible about business, life, the ways that you can make money, the way that you can be successful. Don't follow Dan Pena. He's a bloody fraud, but everyone else, follow them because they are well, they've done something good to get to where they are. That's for sure.
Yeah.
I think. Yeah. I mean, and I guess going back to initial sort of countries and how it differs. And you talked about Spain, I talked about the UK a bit. I definitely in mainland Europe, they're very bothered about people being successful. I'm one of my friends who lives in France. If you had a nice car in France, they would essentially burn it if it was on the streets. They do not like people being successful. You tell them you have a good salary, they look down on you rather than looking up at you. And I think that's just the reason why a lot of mainland Europe's in the shit, basically, because they focus so much on taxing people to absolute buggery and not focusing on looking at the wealth creators and helping the wealth creators build more of the economy and drive more of the economy forward. The UK, to some extent, was like the USA. The USA really, I guess, pre-Biden, really admired, or maybe sort of 10, 15 years ago, they loved successful people. They admired them. They looked up to them. They thought, this is fantastic. But the reason why Trump was in office was because people, there's a lot of reasons, but one of the reasons because people thought he was fantastic, he was successful, and they admired what he had achieved. If Trump was poor, he wouldn't got anywhere near office. And I think that kind of mindset in America is why a lot of people and the economy in America is, they've got more billionaires than anywhere else in the world because they admire these people and they look up to them, and success is seen as a good thing. And I think that encourages people who are entrepreneurs to go out there and start a business and build something big because they also want to be admired. And I think every entrepreneur would say, to some extent, they want to be appreciated for what they're doing. If everyone was a bit more like that, I think it would be.
It's and honestly, you can find that mindset everywhere, like in every country. It's just that some countries just try and push that a bit more, right? And it's just what it is. It's just what it is.
Yeah, just what it is.
And if you feel that that's something that you don't want to go through, or you want to become something better, it's just your responsibility at the end of the day to try and become that. So
great. Cool, well, that was a short podcast. So we'll catch up with you guys next week.
Great. Thanks, guys.